Now, what object-oriented programming does is give us a syntax that we can use to make these relationships explicit. And everything has a slightly different name. So for example, functions in object-oriented programming are called methods, and variables that get shared between those various methods are actually called properties. And the overall machine, everything that we see in this file that relates to one another, is called a class. And so let's look at how that's structured, the exact syntax here. So here's our new CRUD class. We begin with the keyword class and then the name of our class. The convention is to begin a class with a capitalized letter, so we know it's a class when we call it rather than some other type of variable. And then we have an opening bracket, and everything in here is enclosed within that. At the very bottom, we have the closing bracket for that class. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Next, conventionally, though it's not absolutely required, we set the various properties that are going to be shared between the functions in this class. Now again, properties are just variables that are used within the class. So in this case, there's only one property that we want to share between all the functions, and that's this options array. Now again, options is the array of configuration that we supply in our administrative pages. Now this first function has the same name as the class, and this is called a constructor. The way you build a constructor is just this way. You name the function the same as the class. And what happens when a new instance of this class is created is that this function will run, and it will take any properties that gets passed to it and process them inside of this function. So if we go back to one of our administrative pages and we look at how this is called, I'm going to go to pages.php in our admin folder here. You see we call a class by using the new keyword and then the name of the class, and then we pass it whatever parameters that we would pass it to the constructor. So here you see the options variable getting passed to it. Now this class can reference itself, and the way it does it is through a this variable here. So outside of the class, if we go back to pages.php, we point to it by the variable that we gave it when we defined it here, so CRUD. So when we run CRUD display page, we use the variable name CRUD. But we can call the same methods, which are actually functions, within the class itself by using the this variable. So first we establish the options here as the options that we pass to the CRUD function when we initialized the class. So in this line here, we basically have a private variable that we can use for any of the functions in this class. What this means is that instead of explicitly passing this options variable between the different functions, we now know that we have it captured in this options. And so when we run the view function or the validate function, we can simply grab that variable by using this syntax right here. So this dash and greater than symbol is called an object operator, and it's what establishes the relationship between the class and the various properties within it. So right here, options is just a variable, as it is right here, but it becomes a property of this class when we establish it right here. Notice that when you establish the property, you don't use a $sign like you would for a traditional variable. That $sign is right here. In these next couple of lines, we're looping through the options array, and we're adding some additional properties to this class. This will just make it a little bit easier to reference these later on, so we don't always have to refer to options directly. And if you remember in our previous CRUD script, we added an option to the options variable for the path. This time we're creating a new property for this class called path, but we're establishing it the same way by grabbing it from the get query.